Hello and welcome back, friends, to another episode of Lynch Paints. This one has been a little bit delayed, but I had to get a new model and do it all over again. So here we are, take two, and it's going to work and it'll be fine. So before we dive in, just a little mention, if you're new, then welcome along and just hit the subscribe button down below. There's a massive percentage of you guys that watch my stuff that aren't subscribed, and it makes me a little bit concerned. So if you just want to just spend 2 seconds of your time, click it down there, that'd be amazing. And of course, like, comment, share, all that sort of lovely stuff. And yeah, with all that waffling out the way with, let us grab our paints and paintbrushes and our siege weapons. Don't forget the chevrons, and let's dive straight into this. However, before we get started, we're going to need a selection of paints, and these are all the ones I've used in this video today, alongside which we're going to need a little fluffy dry brush. We're going to need a slightly thicker basing brush, a medium-sized brush, and of course our good old favourite teeny weeny teeny tiny brush for all of those teeny tiny heretical places. So our first step is that we're going to start out with a black acrylic primer, going over all of the miniature. And then they're going to use some of this Iron Warriors, because we're painting Iron Warriors. So this is all the colour you need. No, I kid. And we're going to get a nice fluffy brush. It's going to wipe the majority off. And then we're going to dry brush all over our miniature. So once we have gone over the model with the dry brushing with the Iron Warriors, we're then going to move over to using a little bit of Grey Knight Steel. And this is because I wanted some of the metal work to stand out just a little bit from the rest of the miniature. But if it is a little bit too bright, then it's not a huge issue, because once it's dried, I'm going to go back over it using some Null oil. But I just wanted to see how it would look with just a little bit of a highlight. Now there's different ways you can do it with the dry brushing. You can either just use it as a normal brush, kind of back and forth, or you can stipple, which will create a little bit of texture. So I might do a little bit of both and just see how it turns out. After the dry brushing, it's actually turned out pretty darn good using that Grey Knight Steel. Now you could always use something like chainmail. It is a bit of a brighter silver, but I quite like using the Grey Knight Steel just because it has that nice kind of cool tone to it, nice kind of blue. And now we're going to move on to using some good old Null oil. So you could either use Null oil or we can use Agrax. So the shade is entirely depending on what kind of mood you're going to go for. So the Agrax is a nice dark brown, which is going to add some nice warm tones to the miniature. Or we can just stick with good old Null oil, which is basically just a very, very dark black, you know what I mean. And with this, we're just going to go over just some of the areas. You can go over the entire model with this, but it will take the sheen off the metal, so you might have to go back over it with the Grey Knight Steel just to make it extra shiny. So we're just going to pick out a few areas just to fill in with this, and then we'll leave it to dry and then move on to the next step. Now that our washes have dried, I'm going to try something a little bit different now. It may not be any easier, but I think it might be relatively easy. So we're going to start out with this Corax White, as they say, Corvus White. And as it's a base colour, it's quite a lot thicker than your typical sort of layer paints. So it means that it's going to go on a lot better over the majority of colours. And we're going to use this in conjunction with this Imperial Fierce contrast paint to make our yellow. So we're going to do it yellow first, and then we will then add in the black stripes afterwards. So just grabbing a medium-sized brush. I'm not going to go too mad with the amount of chevrons that we're going to have, but I'm just going to pick out a few areas to start out with. I'm going to paint the whole thing in white. Now it's time for the contrast paint. So I did initially think that how I was going to do it was that I was going to use a combination of Mornfang Brown and this, well, it's the only yellow that I have, but Flash gets yellow. And I was going to mix the two together. I was going to start out with brown, then mix in the yellow, slowly build it up. And then I thought to myself, well, let's make it easier. Let's make it as easy as we can. So I figured do the white, then this yellow contrast paint, and then we can do our stripes, the black stripes afterwards. And I think that that'd be a really nice, easier way of getting a very nice crisp yellow as well. Yeah, I mean, it might be, actually I don't think it would even be extra steps, but you get a nice, much nicer yellow with this. I mean, of course, you don't have to use contrast paint. If you don't have to, if you have a yellow speed paint, then that will work just the same, really. So we're going to leave that to dry. You could, if you wanted to, actually do a second coat and just kind of focus on the bottom edges, the bottom sort of half, just intensify the yellow, make it a little bit darker. One thing as well that I didn't mention beforehand is that while I was doing the washes, I used the Agrax on the weapons. I'm not quite sure how well you can see, but there was a slight tonal difference between the armor, where I've used the null oil, and then the weapons with the Agrax Earthshade. And also sort of use it on the vents and these bits here as well. Again, probably can't see it on the camera, but if you're doing this at home, I would recommend just using this for the weapons. It just helps to differentiate between the metallics of the armor versus the weapons. It just makes it stand out a little bit better as well. So I'm going to leave that to dry, and then we'll use some black contrast paint to do the stripes. Once the yellow is dried, I'm just going to go back over it, just using some of this Agrax Earthshade, but I'm just going to thin it down using a little bit of water, just to add a little bit more contrast to the yellow. Just going to just pop it on there. If it looks like it's a little bit too dark, a little bit too much, then just get rid of some of the excess, and then you should be good to go. While we're waiting for that to dry, we're going to introduce another contrast. We have this Black Legion contrast, and just using a medium-sized brush, it's going to go over the shoulder pads, but just the bits on the inside. I quite like having the trim in that same metallic colours as the rest of the miniature, but you can go over the trim if you like. It's entirely up to you. And then also what I'll do is that I'll go over areas of the bolt gun, sorry, not bolt gun, bolt pistol, with this same paint. Our main man is looking very Iron Warriors-y, but just while we're waiting for these little areas to dry fully and completely, I'm just going to go over just a few little details. So I have some of the Screamer Pink, and I will grab some red as well, and we're just going to go over just the handle on the power maul over here. It just depends on what weapon loadouts you have equipped with your miniature. So if you want a nice kind of like dirtier sort of red, start out with Screamer Pink, mix in a little bit of the Mephiston Red, and just kind of layer up from there. You don't have to be too neat and precise, because again, you're going to be wanting to paint lots and lots and lots of these. So the simplest way we can do it, the better. So I figured while we have our red, may as well just do its teeny weeny tiny eye lenses. So I'm going to grab a little bit of this and a little bit of black. I've got Corvus Black just because it's the paint that I've got. And that's that. So we're going to start out with using a teeny tiny brush, and then we're going to paint just the first sort of 2/3 of the lens. Doesn't matter too much if you end up overspilling onto the top section there, just underneath that sort of rim on the helmet, because we can tidy that up afterwards. And then what we're going to do is that we're just going to mix in a little bit more red. This time we're going to use pure red. You don't have to wash your brushes out after each paint. It's not that essential. Of course, other than using it for the teeny tiny white dot for the little reflective lens at the end. So with this, we're going to use it to paint about half of the lens, focusing just kind of going underneath, following that sort of lower section of the lens there. And then of course we don't want to be adding white to our red, otherwise we're going to get pink. No one wants pink eye. So we're going to add in a little bit of yellow to make an orange, or if you already have orange, just use that instead. And so with this, we're going to then paint the first third, just a little bit, just like that. And that way you get a nice little blended effect, and it really helps to sell that sort of glowness on the thing. Hello, Ripley, what are you doing? Come here. Sorry, cat's trying to make an appearance on the show and drink the paint water. So, go on the lap. No, don't want to go on the lap. Never mind. And then once we've got all that done and out of the way with, and the cat's off the table, I'm going to grab a little bit of white, and again just using a teeny tiny pointy brush, it's going to make a little white dot right at the back. About there, and then again just about there, just to help sell that reflective look. And again, we can just tidy that bit up as well later on. And I think that the other section of the armor now dries, so we're going to move on to the next steps. So while we have our white and our yellow, we're just going to highlight just a little bit yellow areas, just so then it stands out a little bit. And it's probably the only highlighting that you need to do on this miniature, to be fair. It's looking a little bit bright, so you can always just add in a little bit more yellow. Just have a little play around with the colours, depending on how dark you've made the yellow panels to start with. So give it a little highlight, and then we'll move on to putting in the stripes. So time for the stripes, and we're going to grab this Black Legion contrast, and we're going to just make a couple of stripes as best we can, obviously diagonally, and just kind of lightly place where the first line's going to go, and then work from there. You don't want them obviously too thick or too thin, and just remember how thick you done the first one, and then place in the others. And I quite like using the contrast one just because it's easy to go on. It goes on over most of the previous colours, and you do get a little bit of the previous colour showing up through as well, so it's not entirely black, which just helps just to add to it a little bit. It means you can put on a second layer, and you can kind of build up a little bit of well, contrast. One thing that you can do if you're feeling particularly clever is that you can take some of the previous yellow, and then you can just add in a few little scratches, little kinks here and there, just onto the chevrons, and just helps just to break it up a little bit and makes the piece a little bit more interesting, a little bit more so weathered and such. If you are interested in me doing some videos on weathering miniatures, Space Marines, tanks, that sort of thing, I think I've done one for tanks, not too sure, but let me know down in the comments, as I'd like to show you guys what I can do with just simple little techniques like this. And again, doing this sort of thing, you don't want to do too much. You kind of just want to have just enough to get the point across. And again, using this colour, because it is a little bit of a lighter shade of yellow, we can use that just to highlight the chevrons a little bit here as well. So all that's left really to do is the logo. So I've got my two paints here. I do apologise for the little camera wobble there. I've got the image loaded up, and it's just a simple little metal skull. Got my two colours here. So one is going to be the prime colour, and then the other one is just going to be for a little bit of highlighting / blending. Got my teeny tiny brush, and yeah, let's boogie. And so here we are at the end of the video. So this is how I went about painting the Iron Warriors for your Horus Heresy legions. And you know what? It's turned out pretty darn well. I was quite proud of the skull. It was a little bit fiddly, so I had to kind of, as you saw, kind of kept going back and sort of touching bits up and sort of recorrecting. And it is difficult in terms of trying to get the symmetry right, but it's a lot of fun. So again, as always, I encourage you to just give the freehanding a go. It's not as daunting as it seems, because you can always just strip the paint off that section, or just paint back over it in a thin layer of something like contrast, or maybe something a bit thicker, just like black, or whatever the prime color is for the shoulder pad. Just paint over it, and always work in thin layers. So if you do mess up and sort of have a little mistake, you can quite easily cover it up and no one's gonna know, and it's brilliant. And yeah, easy way to do chevrons as well, you know, because you look at it and you think, oh, that looks really daunting, but if you kind of break it down, do the lighter bits first, then do the darker bits, it's actually not that bad. So enough waffling. If you want to pick up some of these miniatures for yourselves, then I've got an affiliate link for Wayland Games in the description below, and I get a little bit of kickback upon each completed order, so it's a fun way to support the channel. And speaking of fun ways to support me and things I do, then the best thing and the easiest thing is to simply share this video around to your friends, comment down below, do you collect Iron Warriors? Did I do them justice? And of course, if you're new and you haven't subscribed, then I don't know what to say other than just click the button down below and take a few seconds of your time, and thank you ever so much for joining the Lynch Paints community. I have a Instagram page as well, at Lynch Paint, which is linked in the description. Also down there you will find a link to my free Discord server where you can kind of jump in, have a chat, and just hang out, really. So it's, yeah, I'm just trying to build up a little thing over there, and your support will be massively appreciated. As always, my lovely, lovely painters and watchers out there, thank you ever so much for watching. Stay safe, stay beautiful, and we'll see you all next time.